We are beginning section 11.2 in your world history book, and we're going to be talking about a new empire. Now, section 1, we talked about the Roman Church and how it had got corrupted from the time that Constantine basically became a Christian and put the church under legal terms that you could legally be a Christian, and on to Justinian, who said you only could be a Christian, which brought in a lot of people that really weren't converted to Christ but had to be there in the church. And so, but now we're going to be talking about what was going on the same time with the kings or the emperors. Now remember, Constantine was Caesar, right? And from Constantine and going on to Justinian and the Byzantine, he was just definitely that Caesar figure too. So now we're going to have a new group of people come into control. And these guys were called Franks. When you think of Franks, what do you think of? I think you would think of the French, right? And indeed, they are the beginnings of the French nation, but also of the German nation. We'll find too. So, and anyway, let's get going, because basically going through this, you're going to see similarities in what happens with the clash between the Roman Church that we just studied and these new emperors. Okay. The Franks. I called them the Franks. Hopefully you're going to get this in your, make sure it's focused better. There we go. So you can see it all. There you go. The Franks, the first Frank that you're going to begin. A lot of them start with C. Only one of them, I think, doesn't start with C, but so that's how I remember the Franks. Clovis. Clovis was one of the first great leaders. So Clovis was basically representing this leader. He had conquered, he was a great military person. He had conquered the areas which are now France, Holland, Belgium, and Germany. He inherited his position. So when you say inherited, yes, he basically, his father and grandfather were Franks, but he was the first great consolidated leader. So when you think of Franks, you always got to think of Clovis. So he was a military leader and a genius at it. He conquered the Germanic tribes of Gaul, all of them. So he was a barbarian type figure. He was extremely crafty ruler. So in coming to conquering the lands, he was very good at it. So he identified the kingdom of the old Roman Empire with his gain and respect. So he thought, yes, I want to be considered like Caesar. I want to be like Julius Caesar or whatever. So he recognized and thought that I'm going to be the head of the old Roman Empire. Come back. So in 498, we go 498 right here, 498, the Battle of Tolbiac. And Tolbiac now is right out of Paris. So we're talking about the area of France, because Paris is the capital of France. So at this battle, something drastic happened to Clovis. Now remember, he could go back and think of Constantine in 300s, which was over 150 years earlier. He probably heard about Constantine's profession of faith. Remember, Constantine saw the cross in the sky, and he became a Christian. So now we have Clovis at this battle. He was losing the battle, and he decided to profess to be a Christian. So he called on God during this battle. You know what? I do believe that when even a pagan calls on God and seeking the true and living God, they may find him. So a lot of people think Clovis, he had a false conversion. Well, maybe so, because he didn't have a lot of fruit from that conversion. But again, he was seeking. So in the light that he had, we don't know. So I hate to say that he wasn't, and I hate to say that he was, really. But Clovis won the Battle of Tolbiac at Paris, and then he decided he wanted to be baptized. So the only place you can get baptized then was into the Roman Church, remember? Because the Roman Church had taken over and had been pretty corrupted, but he wanted to be baptized. So he decided he doesn't want to be a pagan anymore. He wants to be baptized. So he brought in on Christmas Day, thinking Christmas Day, that's a special day of Jesus Christ, right? That's Jesus Christ was born. That Christmas Day he'd come into Rome, Clovis, this great pagan genius ruler, military leader, coming in, and that he would be baptized. But he brought 3,000 of his soldiers and wanted them to be all baptized too. So really, their conversion, like, they were all getting baptized, but they were only getting baptized because Clovis told them to get baptized, right? But so him and his 3,000 soldiers came and got baptized. So remember, you don't get mixed up with Constantine. Constantine saw the cross in the sky. Constantine ended the persecution. He was that 100 years before, but now we have Clovis similarly doing the same thing. He realized that Constantine had won the battle, and so he decided to call on the God through Jesus Christ to win his battle, and God did answer him in that area. Clovis and the Roman Church. So Clovis turned all his wars now into holy wars. So he didn't stop fighting, did he? He just said, well, we're going to have more holy wars, because he was defeating more people and conquering more pagan areas, especially up to the north. And so any of his defeated people, anybody that he conquered, these peoples that he conquered, had to accept the Roman Church. So he said, you guys have to accept the Roman Church and become Christians. And in doing this, they had to be baptized. He was into baptizing them. So he said they had to, no matter what, even if, so they didn't have a choice. You know, God gives us a choice to become Christian or not, but they didn't have a choice. And if they didn't, what did he do? They would be killed. So they had no good choice but to accept the Roman Church. The Roman Church gained much wealth because basically Clovis went and conquered all these lands, and he gave the land to the church, to the Roman Catholic Church, right? So he gave this land, so the church became more wealthy because of Clovis. And of course, the Pope at that time would really love the guy, So this alliance between the Pope and between Clovis united the French, or the Franks, and the Roman Church for over 1,000 years. So you'd say, look, in French history, even now, it's very Roman Catholic, isn't it? Because it started with Clovis, the first Frank, to stand and be baptized. Clovis gained respect as the leader of the new Roman Empire now. So he was now right where he wanted to be. He was going to be the head Caesar. Not called Caesar, of course he's called Clovis, but he believed that he was the head. Even though, and the Pope had given him that opportunity to be the head. Going on. Clovis was a Merovingian. A Merovingian was basically because his grandfather was named Merovy. So a Merovingian was, if I can pronounce that right, Merovingian. I have sometimes a hard time pronouncing some of these things. But anyway, a Merovingian was Clovis's. He was a descendant of these kings. So his descendants fought over the rule after Clovis died. Of course, that's what's happened. They're all fighting on which guy is going to take over. Well, they were sometimes united, but most of the times they weren't united. They didn't get along, and they committed many savage crimes. They were not good Christians, just to say that. And even the church leaders that they appointed as church leaders were liars and murderers. They did a lot of immoral acts, and they were just completely gross. In fact, when in history you'd call them the do-nothing kings. And so here we have 511, Clovis dying, and now we have a turn. The Merovingian line of believers would be, that dynasty would be a do-nothing dynasty. So what's going to happen? You would think it would die out, but something did happen. Let's see what happened. They had a mayor of the palace, and he took care of all the Merovingian things, the family and everything. In 715, he ruled for this family of believers that came from Clovis, Merovingian, and he restored the Frankish Empire, because he was so strong, and he was the mayor of the palace, so he was not inherited king. So he secured the front, but he was a very genius at military, of taking care of basically the kingdom, the empire, the Frankish Empire at that time. So he secured the front against Slavic invasion. Slavic invasion comes from the area now known as Russia. And so he kept them out. And he also had fame in halting the Muslim invasion of the Moors. That's what he's really known for. So when you think of Charles Martel, let's put so you can see him better. You think of Charles Martel, the mayor of the palace. He was called the Hammer, and he hammered out the Muslims. Now, if Charles Martel did not do this, the Muslims would have taken over all of Europe. And most of Europe, even the world, would all be under Muslim control. So, very important. The Muslims had already conquered the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal area, and they were heading to France. And at the Battle of Tours, think of Battle of Tours now, Martel defeated the Muslims. But this war actually went on for like 10 years after that. So he kept the Muslim control out. Martel means the hammer. The hammer, hammering the Muslim. Here's a picture of the Muslims down here. He hammered the Muslims out of Europe. And so he prevented the Western Europe from being swallowed up by Muslims. Charles Martel. So we have Clovis. He's of the Merovingian family, and basically he's the mayor of the palace. He's not king, although here I have a picture of him with a crown on, but he's ruling in their stead. But now his son was Pepin. Now I always say they all start with C. Well, Pepin's the only one that doesn't start with C. That's all. But Pepin was Charles Martel's son, and of course Charles Martel was the mayor of mayor. He was the mayor of the palace. He was not a king. Well, Charles' son Pepin, he was actually doing the same thing that his dad was doing, and he basically wanted the title of a king. He didn't want to do it as a mayor of the palace because the Merovingian were known as do-nothings. They were doing nothing, and he was doing everything. So Pepin went to the Pope, and he won support of the Pope to be, the Pope was God's spokesman. So the Pope said, yes, we like Pepin. We don't want these Merovingians. They're not even doing anything. They're just sitting around fighting with each other. So in 751, the Pope then crowned Pepin as the king. So now Pepin was the king to the religion of that time, to the Roman religion. So he was going to be crowned king. And so the Pope had the power that they had then. They took the last Merovingian king, and put them in a monastery. So they would not be able to do anything. So they didn't kill him. That was a good thing, but they put him in a monastery. Next, the Pope had Pepin's coronation as monarch. So basically, just like, okay, we have Clovis being baptized on Christmas Day, right? And now we have Pepin, he's going to become king, and the Pope's going to put a crown on his head. And so anyone who disagreed with Pepin being the king now would be excommunicated from the Roman Church. And if you were excommunicated, that meant that you would be going to hell. Because you couldn't have any sacraments or you couldn't be involved in the church. So that meant these Merovingian kings, they actually had to accept Charles Martel's son, Pepin, now would be emperor, would be king. And this began another line from the Merovingian line down to the Carolingian line. Merovingian down to the Carolingian line of Frankish kings. So we have Carol meaning Charles. That's what the word Carol means, Charles. So Carolingian line of Frankish kings began with Pepin the Short. Actually, it began with Charles Martel, but Pepin would be the first of this line. The alliance of the church and the kingdom now was certain, because basically these emperors, they were aligned with the Pope. They wanted to be crowned by the Pope. So we had alliance between the popes and now kingdom, or the emperors. I say king, there are Frankish kings, but they consider themselves as emperors. So the Pope needed these Frankish kings for protection. They were great military leaders, so he wanted them. And he especially wanted them to protect him from the Lombards, because the Lombards kept coming into Italy and trying to overcome and attack Rome. And so he really wanted these Frankish kings as being emperors to protect the Roman Church. So in 756, Pepin defeated the Lombards in northern Italy. So Pepin did do this. Pepin did a lot for the church. And he gave the Lombards land to the Pope. So basically he took over the Lombards' land. They were in northern Italy. And he said, okay, I'm defeating these guys. And they kept trying to fight against the rest of Italy, which was in the southern part, which was actually the Roman Church. And so Pepin took the land from the Lombards that he conquered, and he gave them to the Pope as a gift. And he called this gift the Papal States. That's where the Vatican is right now, and actually where the Pope is right now. The Vatican States came from Pepin. So he called these the papal meaning Pope, the Pope States, and now these states would be, they would be not part of Italy, but they would belong to basically the Roman Church forever, and they're still there. So who gave where the Pope is? Pepin the Short. Must have been pretty short. So going on, this alliance goes on just in the time of Clovis. We have the alliance now, Clovis being the king or emperor, to Charles Martel being that palace, the palace mayor, where his son Pepin is now king and took over the palace. And this will influence the Middle Ages even to the present time as the Franks or the French kings. So let's go on, because we're going to go on to the next French king, which is going to take a while, and his name would be Charlemagne.